Hi, boys and girls. We are starting lesson 19 in math today. So in front of you, you need your pink problem set that says lesson 19 problem set. We are continuing to work on subtraction just like we worked on yesterday. So I kind of want to run it the same as yesterday. It's a little bit different. Let's look at our objective and I can statement for today. So we are decomposing twice to subtract measurements, including 3-digit minuends with zeros in the tens and ones place. That sounds tricky, confusing. I can regroup twice and subtract. So basically what it means, and it kind of says it right here, with zeros in the tens and ones place. So we're subtracting across zeros. And not all the time, but we'll see a couple places like where we have 700, we're subtracting from 700 again there. When we do some borrowing, we might be subtracting across two zeros there as well. Excuse me. Okay, so let's take a look. I want you to work with me for a few this morning. We'll kind of do like we did yesterday. It might be a little bit, I don't want to say it's going to be trickier today, but we just need to pay a little bit more careful attention today since we might be borrowing twice, as our objective says that we're going to be doing today. So stick with me. I think that we'll do maybe this side together, and then I'll send you off to do this side on your own. Does that sound okay? So will you stick with me? We'll kind of go through here. We'll do this column first, A, C, E, and G, and then I'll send you off and you can do those on your own. And again, we'll kind of work it like we have in the past, where if we do these four together, and then if you are feeling really confident, then just breeze through those four, and then you can come back when you're done all four and check them. If you're not quite there, then maybe pause it, do one on your own, check, pause it, do one on your own, and check. So whatever works for you, okay? Okay. So our first one, A, says 340 centimeters minus 60. So we're going to copy that right down. So 340 minus 60, make sure the 6 is under the 4 in the tens place. Okay, so we start in the ones, of course, and 0 minus 0 is 0. 4 minus 6. Can I do 4 minus 6? I can't, right, because 4 is smaller than 6. So I'm going to cross out the 3 and make it a 2. And the 4 becomes a 14. Okay, 14 minus 6 is 8. Good. And then I'm just going to bring that 2 down because it's not subtracting anything. So my answer for A is 280 centimeters. You okay with that one? That's kind of like what we did yesterday, right? It's basic subtraction. So if we look at C, we have 513 grams minus 148. Okay. And then I start in my ones column, 3 minus 8. I can't do 3 minus 8, right? So I go to the tens and I've got a 1. I'm going to cross out the 1. I'm going to make it a 0. And then this 3 becomes a 13. 13 minus 8. What is 13 minus 8? 5. Good job. All right, now look at our tens column though. I've got 0 minus 4. Can I do 0 minus 4? No, so I need to go next door to the 5. I'm going to cross out the 5 and I'm going to make it a 4. And then this 0 becomes a 10. Okay, 10 minus 4 is 6. And 4 minus 1 is 3. So 365 grams. Don't forget to give it the label just like we've been doing the last few lessons. So this was an example of our I can statement or objective. I can regroup twice and subtract. So we had to borrow and regroup there twice. So since we couldn't do 3 minus 8, we had to borrow from the tens column. And then since we couldn't, once we made that a 0, we couldn't do 0 minus 4. So then we had to hop over into hundreds place and borrow from there as well. So that's what that means. So that's a little bit different than what we did yesterday because we're borrowing twice here. Okay. All right. So let's go down to the next one. So for E, we have 700 minus 52. So this time we're subtracting across two zeros. So you'll see, we'll get going with that, okay? So 0 minus 2. I can't do 0 minus 2. So let's look at the tens place. Uh-oh, that's a 0. There's nothing there for me to borrow, right? So since I can't borrow from there, I'm going to keep going over, and I'm going to go to the hundreds place. I'm going to cross out the 7, and I'm going to make it a 6. And then I'm going to make this a 10. Okay? So now, if I go back here, I still can't do 0 minus 2. But if I look next door now, this is a 10. So now I've got something to borrow, right? So I'm going to cross out the 10 and make it a 9. And now this 0 can become a 10. Okay? So if that is confusing, maybe just watch that. You could rewind that and watch that again. I had to go back. I couldn't do this. I had nothing to borrow here, so I went to the hundreds, crossed that out, made it a 6, and this became a 10. So then I went here. I still couldn't do my 0 minus 10, right? So I crossed out my 10 because now I have something to borrow from. I crossed out the 10 and made it a 9, and now this can become a 10. Okay? So that just needs some practice to work on that. So then I have 10 minus 2, which is 8. 9 minus 5, which is 4. And 6 minus nothing, which is 6. So 648 milliliters. There we go. Good. And again, if you want to rewind that and watch that over to try to get a better grasp, or if you're good, then you're good. Okay. Again, that's kind of the beauty of the video, is that you can watch it as many times as you need to. All right, G. So we've got the little funky setup here. So 6 kilometers, 802 meters. Make sure we're copying carefully. Minus 2 kilometers, 569 meters. And set that up. So when we put that line there, that's like equals. I was working on some subtraction with kids in class yesterday, and some of them weren't putting that line underneath or the operation. So I said, one, we need to make sure to put if we're adding or subtracting, so you want to make sure we have that sign there. And also put that line underneath it, because that helps us separate our work, but it's also like saying equals, right? So we're saying, like, for example, this one, 700 minus 52 equals 648. So that line, you can kind of think of our equal sign when we're setting our number sentence up vertically. Okay, so we have meters, meters, meters. And then I look on the ones, 2 minus 9. I can't do 2 minus 9, so I hop over to the tens. Ooh, is there anything there for me to borrow? There's not. So now I go to the hundreds. I can borrow here, right? So I'm going to cross out the 8 and make it a 7, and this 0 becomes a 10, right? I want to go back here. I don't want to subtract there yet. I want to go back to my ones. Can I do 2 minus 9? I still can't do it. So now I go to next door. Now I do have something in the tens place to borrow, right? So I can cross out the 10, make it a 9, and the 2 becomes a 12. Now I can subtract, right? So 12 minus 9 equals 3. Good. 9 minus 6 equals 3. Good. And 7 minus 5 equals 2. Kilometers, kilometers, kilometers. And 6 minus 2 equals 4. You guys are good. Okay, and then we'll circle it. Okay, so if you stayed with me for that, your next task is to do this column on your own and then make sure to check, okay? So again, if you want to do all 4 and then check, or if you want to check as you go, just pause and play, that's up to you, whatever you feel comfortable with, okay? All right, off you go. Pause your video and off you go. I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so if you are back with me, let's check and see how we did. So for B, we had 340 minus 260. And then we started with our ones and we did 0 minus 0, which is 0. 4 minus 6. We can't do 4 minus 6, right? Because 4 is smaller than 6. So I'm going to go next door in the hundreds place, cross out the 3 and make it a 2. And the 4 becomes a 14. So I'm going to put that 1 right in front of there. So then I've got 14 minus 6, which equals 8. And then 2 minus 2 is 0. Do I need to put that 0 in the very front? No. So 80 centimeters. How did you do with that one? Did you do okay? Good. And if not, just make corrections as we go and make sure that you're understanding where the mistake was, okay? D, 641 minus 387. Okay. And then we have 1 minus 7. Can we do it? No. So I go next door to the tens. I'm going to cross out the 4 and make it a 3. And then this 1 is going to become an 11 because I'm going to put that 10 right in front there. So then I have 11 minus 7 is 4. 3 minus 8. I can't do 3 minus 8, right? So I go next door to the hundreds. I'm going to cross out the 6 and make it a 5. And the 3 becomes a 13. So then 13 minus 8, what'd you get for 13 minus 8? Did you get 5? Good. And then 5 minus 3 equals 2. So 254 grams is what I got for my answer. Did you get that too? Good job. Okay, so then let's look at F. So we're subtracting across zeros for F because I have the 700, so 2 zeros. 700 minus 452. And we can certainly do this. It might just require a little bit more careful attention here, okay? 0 minus 2. Can't do it. I go next door to my tens. It's still a 0, so there's nothing there for me to borrow. So then I go to my hundreds. Can I borrow from here? I sure can. So I'm going to cross out my 7 and make it a 6. And then this 0 in the tens becomes a 10. So I'm going to hop back to my ones. 0 minus 2. I still can't do that, right? So now I'm going to cross out the 10 and I'm going to make it a 9. I'm going to borrow from there. And now this 0 becomes a 10. Okay. 10 minus 2 is 8. 9 minus 5 is 4. And 6 minus 4 is 2. And our label there would be milliliters. If the subtracting across zeros is giving you a hard time, the best thing to do, boys and girls, is just to practice. Let me just write down a few, and then if you want to practice these and then have mom or dad or grandma or an older brother or sister check it, or you could even check it on a calculator yourself to see if you're correct, the best way is just to practice. And then if you are still, like, you can look back and watch the video again to see what I did when I was subtracting across the zeros till you get a hang of the process. So let me do like 5, and you don't need to do these. If you are feeling comfortable, then you're fine. 500 minus 296. 600 minus 142. I'll stick another one up here. 400 minus 174. You can make them up yourself, right? So I'm just putting those there for extra practice. If you wanted to practice a little bit more with subtracting across zeros, you could go ahead and solve those, ask someone to check your work, or you could check it yourself if you have a calculator or if you find the calculator app on your Chromebook, okay? So that could just help you get used to the process. Okay, so I'm going to do this last one on the front for H and see how we did. We had 5 liters. 920 milliliters. Remember, liters and milliliters we use when we're measuring liquids. And we had minus 3 liters, 869 milliliters. Okay, I always start over to the right side. So I'm going to start with my label, milliliters, milliliters, milliliters. And then I've got 0 minus 9. I can't do 0 minus 9, right? So I'm going to cross out the 2 and make it a 1, and then this 0 becomes a 10, right? 10 minus 9 is 1. And then if I look in the tens column, I have 1 minus 6. Can I do 1 minus 6? I can't. So I cross out the 9 and make it an 8, and then the 1 becomes an 11. I stick that 1 right in front in the tens place, right? 11 minus 6 is 5. 8 minus 8 is 0. So I'm not going to put anything there. I don't need to put a 0 if it's in the front of the digit. Okay? And then liters, liters, liters. And then 5 minus 3 is 2. So 2 liters, 51 milliliters. What do we think? You good with that? Okay. If you wanted to pause and do those extra ones for practice, you can, or you can do it when we're done our lesson. It's up to you. I'm going to flip over for the back, so you can join me when you're ready. Okay, so if you're with me on the back and we're ready to go, I'm looking and I see that this is a word problem, right? So I know that if it's a word problem, that I need what? RDWW, right? Read, draw, write, write. Okay. So will you read this with me? Point to David and just read it right out loud with me. Let me hear you nice and loud. David is driving from Los Angeles to San Francisco. The total distance is 617 kilometers. He has 468 kilometers left to drive. How many kilometers has he driven so far? Okay, so I did my read, but I'm not done my read because I need to do the work in there, right? So he's driving from Los Angeles to San Francisco. The total distance is 617 kilometers. And I'm actually going to circle total because it says that that's the total. So that's a clue word too, right? So I'm going to highlight total because that's telling me it's the total. I'm going to circle it because that's what I'm used to doing, right? It's just circling the total. And then it says he has 468 kilometers left to drive. I see another clue word. Do you? What did you find? Left. Good. So we can highlight that. Remember, if you don't have a highlighter, then maybe just get a crayon or a colored pencil or something. I really want you, boys and girls, to be drawing attention to these clue words to try to help us, right? And then my question says, how many kilometers has he driven so far? All right, that looks like I did a pretty good job on the read. Does yours look like mine? Good. And if you found anything else that you think is important that's helpful to you, go ahead and underline or put parentheses around that too. I'm going to check off my read. Alrighty. So I think I'm going to draw a tape diagram because when I'm thinking that I know the total so far, when I was reading that, I'm thinking, okay, I know the total. So I was already seeing a tape diagram in my head. I have visions of tape diagrams in my head. So the total is 617 kilometers. So I'm going to put that right there because I know that that's my total. Okay. And he has 48 kilometers left to drive. How many kilometers has he driven so far? So I'm going to kind of do that. So he's driven some amount of kilometers so far, and he has 468 left to drive. And I want to know how much has he driven so far. So he's driven this amount here. He has this amount left to drive, and I know the total. So I know the total and I know a part. I'm missing a part. What do I do with these two numbers? And what does left signal me to do? Subtract. Good. So if I'm going to subtract, what number goes on top? The total. So you always want to ask yourself that because even though we know, sometimes kids will just make that mistake. They're not thinking and they'll just take the first number that they see there and stick it on top. But we want to make sure they were putting the bigger number on top, they were putting the total on top, they were copying these numbers carefully, right? Because we won't be able to get the right answer if we don't copy the numbers down carefully to begin with. So 617 and 468. So I start in my ones column, 7 minus 8. Can't do it, right? Because 7 is smaller than 8. So I'm going to go next door to the tens column. I'm going to cross out the 1 and make it a 0. The 7 becomes a 17. 17 minus 8 is 9. 0 minus 6. I can't do 0 minus 6, right? So I go next door to the hundreds, I cross out the 6 and make it a 5, and the 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 6 is 4. 5 minus 4 is 1. So 149 kilometers would be the distance that they've driven so far. And this actually technically should be a smaller box than this, but we get the idea, right? All right, so I did my draw. I wrote my number sentence. What's left for me to do? To write a word sentence. So for that, I go to my question. How many kilometers has he driven so far? So he, with a capital H, he has driven 149 kilometers. I'm going to use that KM as my abbreviation for kilometers. Go ahead and test out number 3 on your own. So if you did number 2 on your own, super. Just make sure that you check. You can try number 3 on your own as well. And if you want to go ahead and give number 4 a try too, and then just come back and check with me, that would be great. So you can pause and work away. Okay, so if you're back with me and we're checking on number 3, so this would be RDWW, right? Okay. The piano weighs 289 kilograms more than the piano bench. So the piano weighs 289 kilograms more than the piano bench. How much does the bench weigh? Okay, so for clue words, the piano weighs 289 kilograms more than the piano bench. So that makes sense, right? When I think about it, that the piano would, of course, weigh more than the piano bench. So I want to know how much does the bench weigh. So I have my piano, and I'm going to kind of use as my draw, I'm going to use this picture there because this is helping me to see. So I see that the piano weighs 297, and it weighs, I'm going to put a plus 289. And not because I want to add these two, but because this is 289 kilograms more than the piano bench, right? And I want to know how much does that bench weigh. What would I do with these two numbers to find the weight of the piano bench? Okay, and let me just check. If you think that we would add these two numbers together, I want to see if that would make sense. So 297, and I know that the piano weighs 289 more than the bench. That would give me a pretty big number if I added those together, right? Would that make sense that the bench would weigh a lot more than the piano? Because the piano is way bigger than the bench. The bench is just the chair, right? So the piano has all of the workings of the piano, and it's huge, right? And it has all the workings of the piano inside of it, all the parts. The piano would definitely weigh more. So what would I do with these two numbers? I'm going to subtract them because since this weighs 289 kilograms more than the bench, I'm going to subtract those two numbers to find the weight of the bench. So 297 minus 289, and maybe it was confusing to put that plus there, but I just wanted us to note that it's 289 kilograms more than the bench. Okay. Alrighty. So 7 minus 9, can't do it, right? So I'm going to go next door to the tens. I'm going to cross out the 9 and make it an 8. The 7 becomes a 17. 17 minus 9 is 8. 8 minus 8 is 0. 2 minus 2 is 0. Do I need to put either of those zeros there? So that tells me that the weight of the bench is going to be 8 kilograms. Does that make sense? Because would the bench be that heavy compared to the piano? No, right? So 8 kilograms. I did my read. I used the picture there to help me with the draw. I wrote a number sentence, and then I'm going to write a word sentence. So how much does the piano or does the bench weigh? The bench weighs 8 kilograms, and make sure to end that with a period. How do we do? Good. Let's look at number 4. That's our last one. Okay, so this would be RDWW. I forgot to cross off my last W there. Okay, tank A holds 165 fewer liters of water than tank B. Tank B holds 400 liters of water. How much does tank A hold? Okay, there's read 1. So if you notice that when we have word problems, if I read it a bunch of times, right? Because I have to read it. I read it once and then I read it again and I pull out my information and I keep reading it till I get what I need out of it. And that's all right, right? Okay, so tank A holds 165 fewer liters of water than tank B. Do you see a clue word in there? This is a clue word that I think. Fewer, what do you think? Fewer tells us that it's less, right? So if I know that it's fewer, then I'm probably going to subtract, right? And then it says tank B holds 400 liters of water. How much water does tank A hold? Alrighty. So I have tank A and tank B. Tank A and tank B. Okay. Tank A holds 165 fewer liters of water than B. B holds 400 liters. B holds 400 liters. And A holds 165 fewer liters of water than B. What would I do? If I know that B is 400 liters and A is 165 fewer liters than B, what would I do with those two numbers? Do you think that we would subtract? Good. What goes on top? 400. So 400 minus 165. Okay. 0 minus 5. We can't do it. So I go next door to the tens. I still have nothing there to borrow from. So I'm going to go next door to the hundreds. I'm going to cross out the 4 and make it a 3. And the 0 becomes a 10. Now I can go back to the ones, right? 0 minus 5. I still can't do it. But now if I'm looking next door, I have a 10 to borrow from, right? So now I can cross out that 10, make it a 9. And now this 0 will become a 10. Okay, so then 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 6 in the tens place is 3. And 3 minus 1 is 2. So 235, what's my label? 235 liters. So tank A would be 235 liters. RDW, I have my last W. How much does tank A hold? Tank A with a capital T. Tank A holds 235 liters. What do we think? Good. So if, again, if you want to practice more, I gave you those few problems. You can make up some more and practice, or if you're feeling good, then super job, okay? So keep up the great work, my sweet little mathematicians, and I will see you tomorrow for our next math lesson. Bye.